Hey there, welcome to Fringe Fantasy, and thank you for watching. Today we're talking about one of my favorite series, the Deverry Cycle by Katherine Kerr. Now that's not to be confused with the Deverry novels by Katherine Kerr. That's a completely different series, one that I've read a trilogy in, and I'll definitely be making a video on that because I really enjoyed it. So what is the Deverry Cycle? Well, the Deverry Cycle is a series, an epic fantasy series that spans 15 books and more than 20 years of writing. And it is a masterclass in using reincarnation. I've yet to see any other series even come close to what Katherine Kerr is able to do using reincarnation in her Deverry Cycle. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Katherine Kerr explains the Deverry Cycle as being like a play, split into different acts, for a total of 4 acts in her main story arc. So Act 1 is Deverry, Act 2, the Westlands, Act 3, the Dragon Mage, and Act 4, the Silver Worm. And again, that's for a total of 15 novels. The Deverry Cycle is quite vast, right? 15 novels is no joke, but it is completely worth it. Again, we'll get into it in a second, for how she's able to use reincarnation, the reincarnation of the main characters, as the driving force behind the whole main plot in this series. But let's talk a little bit about the setting and the history of Deverry before we get into the reincarnation, which is my favorite part of this series. Deverry is a Celtic fantasy story. It's set in a different realm or a world not our own. And the Deverrians, the people who live in this kingdom, they are actually not native to this world, to this realm. They're actually from our world. And they fled the impending Roman conquest of their homeland. And in fleeing, they arrive in this new world, in this new realm. Now, I don't want to get into any spoilers, so it's explained in the books. Again, this whole video is to get you to have the desire to read these books. If you've simply just, not heard of them, or if you have overlooked them in the past, I'm here to help you give them the chance they deserve, because again, they're great. In Katherine Kerr's own words, she explains the series as being that a Celtic tribe, or a Gaulish Celtic tribe, migrates from their homeland and arrives in this new realm, or in this new world left unspecified. And in this new world, they start developing along new lines in response to new conditions. These new conditions being, they're free of all Christian influences and most Roman ones. Another one of the conditions in this new realm is that magic is easier to use than back in their native homeland. So magic in Deverry is called Dweomer. Dweomer is a pretty interesting and unique magic system. And it's a combination of things that you wouldn't think actually go together, but they fit together really well. One of the main aspects of Dweomer is the ability to call on or command the wild folk. The wild folk are these spirits that can pop in and out of sight. And if you use the Dweomer, if you're a Dweomer worker, you have the Dweomer, you can see them. And only people with the Dweomer and only a couple of the other races that live in this realm can actually see the wild folk. But if you have Dweomer, you can command them. Or in great times of need, you can command the lords that rule over them. And in doing so, you can command the 5 natural elements. Yes, 5 being earth, air, fire, water, and aether. Another important aspect of the Dweomer is the reality that the universe is split into different planes of existence. And the most important of these planes for these Dweomer workers being the etheric plane. And so on the etheric plane, Dweomer workers can astral project. Yes, so astral projection is a major part of the magic system in the Deverry Cycle. And so while astral projecting on the etheric plane, Dweomer workers, they can scry about and go around and scout around. They can mess with people's dreams. They can set seals of protection, and they can fight one another. While in this etheric plane, Dweomer workers, they make a body of light, and that's how they move around. And so this body of light is connected to their real bodies by a lifeline, basically. And so when they're traveling on the etheric plane, distance and also fighting on the etheric plane cause a risk for this lifeline to snap. And if it breaks, then the person dies. There's a couple other aspects to Dweomer, so I don't want to spoil. Again, this whole video is to get you interested enough to give these books a chance. There's some very important aspects that I left out. Again, please read the cycle, and you'll find them, and you'll fall in love with Dweomer. It is a very unique magic system. Deverry society, okay? So Deverry society are the humans that came from our world, and they arrived to this new realm, and they started, as Katherine Kerr said, developing to these new conditions, and they make their own kingdom called the Kingdom of Deverry. And in Deverry society, Dweomer is very taboo, and the vast majority of people don't believe it actually exists unless they see a clear manifestation of it. And because of this, Dweomer is usually used more covertly than right out in the open. Deverry society, it's not exact one for one, but it's roughly similar to medieval England, medieval Europe. You have the High King who lives in the holy city of Deverry. Under him, you have his Gwerbrett's. So a Gwerbrett is a person who's given a region called a Gwerbrethian. And in that region, they rule. They are the head of justice. And just as an aside, there is actually a fifth act that Kerr has recently started with her release of The Sword of Fire. And so it's not part of the main story arc of the 15, but it happens later on after the completion of the main story arc, and is actually questioning the ethic and the fairness of having a Gwerbrethian being the head of justice, where, you know, he can know the laws, but he actually decides the outcomes. It's all based on one man deciding how each judicial ruling is going to end up. And so it's people, usually the lower class, questioning that and saying, hey, this is not right. And so again, that's the fifth act, and that is called the Justice War. We only have one book out from that, and I think there's going to be 2 or 3 more coming, and that's like a second story arc for Deverry. So she's still very much active writing this. Back to what a Gwerbrethian is. Again, they have their region, and over this region, they rule. They're the head of justice. And so under them are the other nobleborns in their region. There's other clans, other families that live in their region, and, you know, even the Gwerbretts, they themselves have under them these clans or families, and the clans or families then have their own little towns, and under them are the peasant class that live in their towns. And so the noble families, these clans, they owe fealty to the Gwerbretts, they swear to him, and the Gwerbretts swear fealty to the High King. So when a Gwerbrett has an issue with another Gwerbrett, they call in their allies, and so basically these nobleborns have to bring their war bands to the Gwerbrett, and then they all march out and they try to attack another one, or they all come to the aid of the king. It's very interesting politics and how this all works. So another very interesting part of Deverry society is the mercenary band called the Silver Daggers. So the Silver Daggers are men who have shamed themselves or who have been cast out of their war bands. Basically, a Silver Dagger, they're forced to walk the long road. That's a phrase that's used all the time about these Silver Daggers, is they are forced to walk the long road. And they make a living by hiring out their blades. And so people look at them and they're disgusted by them. They look down on them because they're fighting for coin and not for honor. And that's a very important principle in Deverry society is honor. Basically, you should be fighting for honor. And if you fight for coin, if you're a filthy Silver Dagger, then you're just scum. So these Silver Daggers are looked down upon, but the Silver Daggers are actually a very important part of the books, and they're very prevalent in the series. An interesting thing is how you actually become a Silver Dagger. So to become a Silver Dagger, you must meet a current Silver Dagger, and then you need to ride along with them, and you have to prove yourself in the field of battle, because Silver Daggers don't want their names to be tarnished, right? If they're hiring out their blades, they want people to know when you hire a Silver Dagger, you're hiring somebody who can fight well. Okay, so to become a Silver Dagger, you have to find a current one, and you have to ride along with them. And then after you prove yourself on the field of battle, then that Silver Dagger can decide to induct you into the band if that's what they want to do. And so in order to do that, they'll take you to a silversmith, one of the few silversmiths who know how to prepare the proper alloy and perform the proper incantations over the alloy in order to form the famous, or maybe the infamous silver dagger. And once you have your own, then you're inducted into the band. So silver daggers, again, are very important. Get used to hearing a lot about them because some of the main characters are these silver daggers. So outside of Deveryan society, there's actually another human civilization, another human country or kingdom called Bardek. And Bardek is actually an island nation. Now, they don't have a king. They have more of a sort of democracy type thing where, they can vote and things like that. And so they call Deveryans barbarians, and then Deveryans call them barbarians. It's very interesting. So outside of Deverry and Bardek, outside of humanity, there's actually a number of different races. I only want to talk about 3 of them, and I don't want to spoil anything about the others. Just let them arrive, them and their cultures arrive as you read the books, and let the books unveil that, because I feel like it could be a spoiler. The 3 I want to talk about, or just mention, I only really want to talk about one. There's the elves, there's dwarves, and there's also the Guardians. So real quick, the Guardians, they don't really show up until the second act, Act 2, the Westlands. And the Guardians are very interesting. Basically, they are a unembodied race. The way that Kerr develops this, species, you could call it, and their culture and what they do and how they are, it's very interesting. So I very much like that. Again, you'll have to get to the second act to really learn about them, but they're very important. So real quick, let's talk about the elves. They go by a number of different names. They're sometimes called elves. They're sometimes called the Elkian Lakar. They're sometimes called the Westfolk because they live to the west of Deverry, and they themselves call themselves the people. At the time that the book starts, the elves, for several hundred years now, have been tent dwellers and horse herders in the Westlands, in the plains of the Westlands. And their culture basically consists of them doing their best to remember their former glory and their former culture and keeping as much of that alive as they can remember. Because before, the elves were a beacon of civilization. They lived in 7 beautifully lush cities. And again, they were this great civilization, but a devastation came. And after that devastation, all the cities were destroyed. The survivors found peace and safety on the plains of the Westlands. The what and the why of this devastation is actually a spoiler I don't want to give. I want you to read that in the books. Everything I've shared before now, Dweomer as the magic system, Deveryan society and the politics that it causes, the silver daggers, the other races like the elves and their backstory. I enjoy all these things, but again, the reason you read the Deverry Cycle, it's not necessarily just for the lore and for the history, which all that is great. It's not for these huge plot twists or these jump scares or even these epic fight scenes. You're reading it to be able to see how the reincarnations of the main characters tie all in together to make and to show this huge tapestry that is the main story in Deverry. So basically, you have a present time, you have a main plot, and it moves forward, right? But in between the segments of the main plot, she puts flashbacks to previous lives of the main characters. Now, these flashbacks are to give you valuable insight and information on how the soul, that is currently reincarnated in the bodies of the main characters, how these souls acted in previous conditions in a previous life, and that gives you insight on how they possibly could act in the present. Now, one part of the reincarnation is to try to see if these people will overcome some of their vices or change. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, right? And so it's very valuable information that we get from the flashbacks and saying, look, hey, they're somewhat in a similar situation, or look, this flashback shows you what built up to this event right now. This is how they responded then. Are they going to change, or are they going to react in the same way now? And so it's very interesting, and I really like it. And another amazing thing that blows my mind is that the flashbacks don't just give you valuable information for the present plot, right? Because like I said, you have the present plot, and then you might have a flashback going 400 years in the past to a previous life of these people or of the main characters, and you'll see that. Okay, well, that flashback doesn't just give you valuable information for the main plot that you're reading it next to. Instead, it also gives you valuable information for the other flashbacks that you'll see. So, for example, let's say that in the book Daggerspell, you're going to see flashbacks from the years 600 and let's say also the years 800. Okay, well, in Darkspell, in the next book, again, I don't think this is exactly accurate, but it's just an example. In Darkspell, you could see a flashback from the 700s. So right in between the flashbacks that you saw in Daggerspell. Well, those flashbacks that you already previously saw from the 600s, they relate to the one that you're seeing in Darkspell. So you have to keep in your mind, well, hey, what all these flashbacks. And by doing that, you see, well, in the 600, they had this life. And then you're a book or two later, and it throws you into the 700s, and you're like, whoa, okay, so in the 700s, the 600s, I know it was like this, and that actually relates to this one, but they're not right next to each other. So again, it can be possibly confusing, but it blows your mind when you actually see this in action. When you actually take a second, you're like, wait, so in 2 books ago, we learned that, in the 600s, they had this life and they did these things. Well, in the 700s, that actually relates, but that was 2 books ago, and you have to go and find it. So it's very interesting. I love how, again, she perfectly executes reincarnation. And so she doesn't write the books like a history book. It's not in order. It's very much trying to give you, like I said, the valuable information when you need it for the present plot. But you have to remember some of that information because it's going to help you understand other flashbacks that you'll see in the series. In the author's own words, she explains, one of the main ongoing themes of these books is the profound effect that the past has on the present. To add some life to this theme, I've chosen to juxtapose major events in the past with their effects on the present, rather than starting at the beginning and going right through to the end. Consider the following graphic. If you follow a single line, you'll see that at some points it runs over the other lines, and at other points it runs under. The past in Deverry is one line, the present another. If you follow the lines far enough, you'll realize that what appears to be 2 lines is actually only one, knotting round upon itself to form a pattern. What's more, while each knot looks like a separate entity, it's not merely connected to the whole, it's formed by the whole. The past life stories that appear in some volumes are one of the interlacement. The present time is another. They weave over and under each other to form the volumes, like knots. What's more, the underlying symbolism applies to each human life or reincarnation. It appears distinct, but is part of a larger pattern. Eventually, the last past life section of the final volume will link up with the present time section in Daggerspell, the first volume, and then the pattern will be complete, and hopefully everyone will be able to see it. End quote. Again, it's awesome. And let me just say, Katherine Kerr perfectly executes her promise. So I've read all 15 books, and I've actually started my second round through. And when I did, I was amazed by how much information that we first get in the last books 14 and 15, directly relate to book 1, Daggerspell. And just the planning that she had to do, again, this is over 20 plus years of writing, the planning she had to do to be able to make this a perfect round, it's just mind-boggling. Now, let me just go ahead and squash some of the fears. This does not mean that you have to read all 15 books before you see the magnitude of her use of reincarnation or her execution of reincarnation. You don't have to read all the books, But if you do, you're going to fully see, like you said, you're going to be able to see the complete round of the pattern. But by just reading Daggerspell, the first volume, again, as she explained, she's juxtaposing their past lives with the effects of what happened then in the present time. You just reading Daggerspell, just reading Darkspell, you start to see how she's a master at using reincarnation, and just the way that she thought this up. Again, she set a nigh impossible bar to beat. I've never seen any other story use reincarnation in this way. So don't think you have to read all the novels in order to get this. I don't want to scare you away from the series, because I know 15 novels is a lot. Maybe you have a lot on your TBR. Just give the first book a chance. And actually, if you're like me and you don't book but you audiobook, they have all the first 4 books. So the first act of Deverry in one audiobook. It's about 50 something hours of audio, and so you can just get that one, and then you'll have the first 4 books, and you'll see book after book after book, you'll be able to see how the beautiful play of the flashbacks. And again, like I said, you get certain flashbacks in Daggerspell, and then later on in Darkspell and in the Bristling Wood, you'll get other flashbacks that relate to the flashbacks of the other books, and just build on each other, and it's awesome. So that's the best bang for your buck. That's what I would suggest. If you love audiobooks, go get the first 4 books in one audiobook. And let me just say, Ruth Urquhart, I'd never heard of her before. She does an amazing narration. Again, I would say 10 out of 10. I love her accent, and I think she does a very good job. Real quick, I would just like to explain the main propelling force of the series, right, of the Deverry Cycle. And as I already explained, of course, it's reincarnation. You have these main characters reincarnating time after time after time. But there's the question, well, why are we following the main characters that we're following? So basically, in the year, I think it's like 643 or something, there were 4 people whose lives were all connected. You had Galrian, you had Branwen and her brother Geraint, and you had another guy named Blaine. And more or less, they were all family, right? They're all not family, they're all friends, and they're all noble born. And so Galrian was actually prince to become king of all Deverry, right? And so he actually just wanted to renounce his throne, and he wanted to go and learn the Dweomer. And so basically, spoiler free, basically he didn't understand the effects that would have on the lives of the 3 other people, of Branwen, Geraint, and Blaine. And so he selfishly, plans to go off and do this. And by doing that, he causes tremendous harm in the lives of these 3 people. And in order to set it straight, he makes a vow, and he vows to not stop until he can set that right, what the wrong that he did to them. And so this vow was actually accepted by the Lords of Light, and he hears 3 huge knocks. And that's actually a motif in the books. Whenever something is accepted by the gods or by the Lords of Light, you hear 3 knocks, right? And so he makes this vow, and he hears the knocks, and he realizes, oh no, it's accepted. And so basically, Galrian, whose name is actually changed to Nevin, which means no one, so his name is no one, he is actually, his life is changed, and he cannot die of old age, at least not until he can set it right. He has to be able to fulfill the vow before he can die of old age. And so Nevin doesn't actually reincarnate. He stays the same throughout the series, and he interacts with the reincarnations of Branwen, of Geraint, of Blaine, trying to set right the wrong that he did to them. He's trying to fix the things in their souls that were caused because of his selfishness. And I think that's awesome. I just really love that play, because in each life, in each reincarnation of these main characters, he sees them, and he sees their potential, and he's doing their best to be repentant and to try to help them overcome their trials and stuff. And he's trying to love them, and then at times it's hard to do that, and it's just a beautiful kind of propelling force for the story and for the series. And so that's the spoiler-free, synopsis or summary of the Deverry Cycle. And so in the present plot, Branwen, her name is Jill, Blaine, his name is Rodri, and Geraint, his name is Colin. And again, just an interesting thing is, in 643, Branwen and Geraint were actually brother and sister. But in the present timeline, Jill, which is Branwen, and Colin, which is Geraint, they're actually father-daughter. And so it just shows that in these reincarnations, how you are related and how you interact with these other main characters, even though you're connected and you're kind of pulled together by, destiny or fate, your relationship with these people is different in each of these lives. And I think that's also a very interesting addition to the whole reincarnation, and something else that Kerr plays with very well, and she executes again perfectly. This has been the Deverry Cycle. I know I've probably ranted on. I really enjoy this series, and if there's anything that spiked your interest, I'm here to help you give Deverry the chance it deserves. It is great. And the reason I made this video is I've not seen any videos. I've seen maybe 2 or 3 that actually talk about the Deverry Cycle, and I believed it deserved a lot more. So if you're interested, please, like I said, go and give it a try. Leave in the comments if you're already a fan of the Deverry Cycle, maybe some of your favorite characters or your favorite book without any spoilers, please. And also leave if you never heard of it and you're willing to give it a try. Please let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more on the Deverry Cycle, and if you want me to do videos like this for other series that I've read. And again, this is Fringe Fantasy. Thank you so much for watching.